Hello everyone, John Maher here. It is Thursday the 12th of February 2026 and this is your weekly Grass10 update on the Dairy Edge. Well, it has been another wet week and wet for many parts of the country. The grass growth has been, I suppose, running below normal, particularly because of the wet week. Soil temperatures are hovering around 5 to 6 degrees, which is about normal, but anyway, the wet is having an effect. The growth was about 5 kilograms of dry matter per hectare, which is a little bit lower than normal for February, but anyway, that's explainable given the way the weather has been. Dry matters are running around 15%. So for the week, I suppose then looking at the grass figures that have come into pasture base, the average farm cover is around 870 kilos on the supply side. But a closer look at things would suggest that 50% of farms have an average farm cover of over 1,000, while the other 50% have an average farm cover of only around 700. Now, looking for the growth figure for the week ahead, it's to be a bit higher this week, which just returning more or less to normal, hopefully. A level of rainfall does predominate now into the week, into land that is already fairly wet. So it's going to be challenging in terms of wetness for many of the tasks and things we want to do between grazing and trying to get fertilizer and slurry out. It's going to be very, very difficult to put it mildly. There is indications though that the weather forecast might improve towards the weekend. Going back to the grass figures then, I suppose, very quickly, there are two grass budgets in the newsletter for dairy farms, outline the two scenarios of about an average farm cover of about 750 for 50% of the farms, and another, I suppose, scenario where the average farm cover is about on target at about 1,000 kilograms of dry matter per hectare. And these are outlined in this week's newsletter. Now, in summary, I suppose the level of feed other than grass going into the diet is much, much higher, where the average farm cover is only around 700 or so. And I suppose that's where the alarm bells need to be going off, particularly if there's a shortage of silage on the farm as well. If the silage quality is poor, then this makes the whole scenario a lot worse, because cow performance will be worse and the costs will be higher because more ration will be required. On the grass side, the allocations of grass where farm cover is low are much, much smaller, and there's a lot more silage going into the diet, and the silage goes into the diet all the way into April. So I suppose it raises two quick questions that people need to be asked themselves. Where is grass supply in the farm if you're having the farm cover done? And where is stocks of silage on the farm? So what we've outlined there is a grass budget that's available in Pasture Base Ireland. And if there are videos there outlined in the newsletter explaining how to do it, and some sums in the newsletter explaining the outcomes. So if you are tight on grass and tight on silage, you need to be looking at where things are going to be at. The grass budget tool is very useful in that it will also track how you're doing and also measure the growth rate on the farm indirectly. That's the story with the figures in relation to the grass budgets. I suppose there is some indication that the weather might turn a bit drier but colder towards the weekend. Now, there's positive and negatives on that. Obviously, if it turns drier, it gives a chance to maybe get grazing, but if it turns colder, that has an impact on growth rate. But if there's an opportunity to start grazing, it will be on dry land only, I would think. And it will have to be kind of an on-off strategy. And getting the silage management right, and that will be necessary so as to have an appetite on the cows before they're being turned out. If the cows go out to full of silage, the grazing will be affected. They just won't do the job well at all, and could actually get difficulty in terms of damage. So you need to be prepared for this. So apart from the weather being reasonable, the cows must be right to graze. The paddock must be reasonably dry and friendly to graze. So I mean, but that is easy in, easy out, square in nature. The grass must be of medium cover, not too high in cover, because when you do on-off grazing in tricky weather conditions, there's a level of grass going to be left behind. If the grass is of low cover, that holds its quality well into March and into April. So you have another go cleaning out the paddock. But going into the wrong grass on wet days can do a lot of damage to the ground and can leave a lot of grass behind. So picking the right grass is important. Green and leafy from head to toe is really what we're looking at here. And the last piece, I suppose, the farmer must be ready for this also. Flexibility is the key here. You may get to turn the cows out at 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock for 2 to 3 hours, and you have to be ready for that and get the silage allocations right as well, so that they are not wrong in terms of appetite. Speaking of farmers being right, Stephen Burchill from Bandon, County Cork is our feature farmer this week and our first this year. So Stephen, thanks for doing this. So Stephen had an average farm cover of well over 900 on the start of February, grew about 3.5 kilos per hectare over the winter per day, which is about average. And I imagine Stephen wanted a small bit more grass than that, but as I say, he had a reasonable closing cover, well over 700, so at least he has well over 900 to start off with. Stephen's only started calving, I suppose, in the last 2 weeks. There are 280 cows to calve down. There was 36% calved by Tuesday for the newsletter in a 10-day period. The cow diet is grass for 2 to 3 hours per day, being flexible in that. The cows are held in the yard prior to grazing to put an edge on their appetites, right? They do have access to good quality silage at night, and they're on 3.5 kilos of meal per cow per day. For the moment, they're on once a day, but that will change, I suppose, as things improve, hopefully. In explaining Stephen's situation, he has a dry farm now, to say the least, and he has been grazing for a bit. The lower parts of the farm can get damp, so the farm stretches from, being high above the yard to being lower in altitude below the yard. So there is a difference there, but most of the farm is fairly dry. Some slurry got applied in mid-January, which is a bit of relief for Stephen. About 25-30% of the farm got a level of slurry in mid-January. The plan is to go with fertilizer as soon as the weather improves, which you hope that happens soon, with about 23 units per acre of protected urea when the weather improves. So let's hope the weather improves. I suppose the other few things to mention here before we finish up, there are about 7 spring grazing walks on next week, which will go into more detail to what I outlined here today. And I suppose the other advantages are on farms. There are another 8 events, spring grazing events, on the following week. The list of those events are in the newsletter. You can follow the newsletter to pick out one that's somewhere near you. They're countrywide, ranging from Donegal to Cork to Wexford. So, if it fits for you to go visit those, then by all means do so and see how others are getting on. So that concludes, I suppose, this week's story of Grass10 newsletter. Let's hope the weather improves. But if you'd like to hear more from the Grass10 team, subscribe to the weekly Grass10 newsletter, which is available on the Grass10 page of the Teagasc public website, and the link to the newsletter is also available in the description of this podcast. We would like to thank all those who support the Grass10 campaign: AIB, Grass and Agro, Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine, FBD and the Farmers Journal. This has been your Grass10 update, and I will talk to you all next week when I hope the weather will be better. Best of luck.